If you're a man over 60 and you still masturbate, what I'm about to share might catch you off guard. It may even make you uncomfortable. But I speak from experience. This isn't theory, and it's not a headline. It's what I've seen again and again in the eyes of real men who sat across from me in my clinic. Men who believed their health was just fine, until one day, it wasn't. They were slowly drifting away from the very things that gave them life, connection, confidence, vitality, and they didn't even realize it. And far too often, at the center of it all, was one private behavior. One that no one ever taught them how to manage in the later chapters of life. I'm Dr. Elias Carr. For over 30 years, I've specialized in male aging, energy, and emotional wellness. I've worked with thousands of men, strong men, accomplished men, who found themselves confused by the quiet changes happening in their own minds and bodies. Not because they were doing something wrong, but because no one had ever spoken to them openly about what aging does to a man's intimate health. Or how one simple act, if misunderstood, could slowly drain away everything they hold dear. Here's the paradox. Masturbation can be medicine, and it can be poison. It can improve circulation, reduce tension, and support hormonal balance. But it can also dull your sensitivity, flatten your emotions, and sever the deep connection you truly crave. The difference lies not in whether you do it, but in how you do it, and more importantly, why. In this video, I'll walk you through 7 powerful truths that every man over 60 deserves to know. These truths could mean the difference between slow decline and lasting renewal. So, stay with me. Because what you're about to hear might just change the way you view your health, your body, and your masculinity for the rest of your life. And before we dive in, if this message already speaks to something inside you, I invite you to subscribe and turn on the bell so you never miss another health story made for men like you. And if you feel seen or understood by what we share today, type a 1-inch in the comments. If not, type 0. Because your voice helps me guide this mission forward. Let's begin with the first truth, not about the habit itself, but about what's quietly changing beneath the surface of your skin. Because once you see it clearly, everything else will begin to make sense. I've had men in their 60s, 70s, even their 80s sit across from me with that same uneasy question. Dr. Carr, is this normal? Am I just getting old? And every time I look them in the eye and tell them the truth. Yes, what you're feeling is normal, but that doesn't mean it's the end. See, after 60, your body doesn't break. It recalibrates, it rewrites the rules. The changes are subtle at first, you might not notice them. A little less energy, a little less spark, a bit more effort to feel turned on, or to stay that way. Testosterone, the driving current of male vitality, starts to decline. Not in a crash, but like a dimmer switch slowly fading the lights. And with it goes your muscle tone, your stamina, your drive, and yes, your desire. But here's what no one tells you. This shift isn't just hormonal. It's physical, emotional, even spiritual. And your penis, yes, we're going to talk about it, isn't just an organ of function. It's a barometer of blood flow, nerve health, and connection. When it changes, it's your body whispering that something deeper is shifting too. Inside, there's a special kind of tissue, spongy, delicate, and full of life. It needs oxygen. It needs movement. It needs blood. And when blood flow begins to slow, that tissue doesn't just get quiet. It begins to weaken, to shrink, to forget how to come alive. That's why some men notice they wake up less often with morning erections, why it takes longer to climax, why the sensation isn't what it used to be. It's not in your head. It's not shameful. It's biology. And here's the twist. When approached with care, even solo pleasure, yes, masturbation, can help. It keeps circulation flowing. It keeps those tissues active, but only if done mindfully, with presence and purpose, not out of habit, not as escape, not as anesthesia for something deeper. Because once this natural act turns mechanical, once it becomes just another unconscious routine, it stops helping and starts silently hurting. So if you've been wondering, why does it feel different? Why does it take more effort now? Why don't I feel like myself anymore? The answer isn't always found in a pill. Sometimes it's found in understanding. And understanding begins right here, by recognizing that aging is not the enemy. Disconnection is. But once you see the changes, you can respond to them. And that's where healing begins. He walked into my office, mid-60s, confident smile, but something behind his eyes was off. "Doc," he said, "I thought I was doing everything right. So why do I feel more tired, more distant, and somehow less like a man?" I've heard versions of that story too many times to count. And it almost always begins the same way. Not with disease, not with injury, but with a private habit practiced in silence, so common, it hides in plain sight. Masturbation. Yes, the same act we often dismiss as harmless or even helpful. And it can be helpful. Done with care, intention, and balance, it keeps the nervous system calm, supports circulation, and relieves tension. But for many older men, it quietly crosses a line. What begins as a form of release becomes a form of retreat. What once offered connection with the body becomes a way to disconnect from the world. You don't notice it at first, you just realize you're doing it more often. Out of boredom, out of stress, out of habit. Not because you're truly aroused, but because something inside you feels off. And slowly, the act loses its vitality. It becomes mechanical, it becomes rushed, it becomes necessary, but not satisfying. Some men tell me they can't fall asleep without it. Others say their mind feels foggy unless they get it out of their system. That's not pleasure. That's dependency. And any habit, no matter how natural, can become toxic when it replaces what you really need. Touch, connection, vulnerability, the warmth of being seen, not just stimulated. Because once the body begins using pleasure as a stand-in for peace, it forgets how to reach for anything else. You stop reaching out to friends, stop noticing the quiet joy in a morning walk or a shared meal. You retreat just a little more each day into a world that asks nothing of you, but also offers nothing back. And here's the hard truth I've come to understand after 30 years of listening. Most men don't overdo it because they're oversexed. They do it because they're underconnected. And slowly, silently, the habit that once made them feel alive starts to make them feel alone. But there's good news. This story doesn't have to end in shame or silence, because the same habit that drifts into numbness can also be rewired into awakening. And the first step is recognizing when the ritual has become the risk. I remember the moment clearly. A man in his early 70s, sharp mind, still active, well-respected in his field, looked at me, voice low, and said, "Doc, I just don't feel it like I used to. The edge is gone. I touch myself, but it's like the spark is missing." He wasn't talking about desire. He was talking about sensation. And the look in his eyes? It was part confusion, part grief. No one had warned him this could happen. That something as natural as self-pleasure, when done too often, too roughly, or without intention, could quietly begin to rewire the very nerves that gave him pleasure in the first place. You see, the penis is not just a symbol. It's a delicate instrument of circulation, of nerve sensitivity, of muscle coordination. When stimulation becomes repetitive, rushed, or overly intense, the fine nerve endings, the ones that detect subtle shifts in pressure, warmth, and touch, can begin to dull. Like a piano key played too hard too often, the note begins to flatten. It doesn't happen all at once. It fades. First, it takes longer to get aroused. Then, staying firm becomes more of a challenge. Eventually, the climax feels distant, weaker, fainter. And underneath it all, something else may be weakening. The smooth muscle inside the erectile tissue. This muscle is essential. It fills with blood, creates firmness, and supports endurance. But it depends on healthy blood flow, and when overused without rest or neglected entirely, it atrophies. Like any other muscle, it shrinks without proper care. Then there's the pelvic floor, your body's sexual foundation. If you're always in the same position, slouched in a chair, rushing to finish, tense instead of relaxed, you place pressure on nerves, restrict blood vessels, and weaken the muscles that support both erections and bladder control. Over time, this daily routine, the one you've kept hidden, begins to show its wear. In the bedroom, in the bathroom, and worst of all, in your self-confidence. I've seen men slowly pull away from intimacy, not because they don't want it, but because they fear they can't perform. They're afraid of disappointment, of being seen in that vulnerable space. But I tell them what I'll tell you. This doesn't have to be permanent, because the body, even in its 60s, 70s, and 80s, still remembers. It's waiting. Not for more intensity, but for more intention. And once you begin to shift how you touch, how you breathe, how you show up in your body, sensation can return. But first, we must address something far deeper than physical symptoms, because underneath the numbness of the body is often the quiet ache of the heart. That's what we'll talk about next. I want to tell you something most doctors never say out loud, not because it isn't true, but because it's not in the textbooks. It's in the silence that follows the appointment, in the way a man lingers before walking out of my office, in the weight in his voice when he says, "I just don't feel right anymore, doc, and I don't know why." Over the years, I've learned to listen, not just to symptoms, but to sorrow, not just to dysfunction, but to disconnection. Because what many men don't realize is that they're not just reaching for release when they touch themselves. They're reaching for comfort, for relief, for something that feels like control, when everything else feels like it's slipping away. And that's where the habit can quietly turn into a trap. I've met men who didn't turn to self-pleasure out of desire. They turned to it out of loneliness. They felt anxious, overwhelmed, unseen. And for a few minutes, this private ritual gave them something predictable, a moment of calm, a familiar escape, a feeling that they were still alive in their bodies. But what happens when that moment ends? What happens when the screen goes dark, the breath slows, and the silence returns? Too often, the answer is nothing. No warmth, no connection, no lasting peace, just the faint echo of a need that was never fully met. And that's the heartbreak of it. Because it isn't about morality. It isn't about shame. It's about intention. If the act disconnects you from yourself, if it replaces rather than restores, if it leaves you feeling emptier, more isolated, or more disoriented than before, then it's not healing you. It's numbing you. And that's not your fault. No one taught you how to navigate this in your 60s, your 70s, or beyond. No one told you that pleasure can become anesthesia. That self-touch, without self-awareness, can blur the line between coping and avoiding. But here's the truth. If you've noticed this emptiness, if you've ever finished and thought, "Why do I feel worse, not better?" You're not broken. You're awake. You're beginning to recognize the difference between relief and renewal. And that awareness is the first sign that your body and your heart are asking for something more. Connection, honesty, presence. And that is something we can reclaim. But first, we need to talk about the red flags, the signs that your body is already trying to send you. One thing I've learned after 3 decades of listening to men is that the body speaks long before it breaks. But most of us were never taught how to listen. We were taught to power through, to tough it out, to call it just getting older. So we ignore the signs. We laugh off the changes. We adapt to discomfort as if it's inevitable. Until one day a man sits across from me and says, "Doc, I don't know what's happening anymore. I'm not myself." And when I ask him what he means, he hesitates. Then he says it. "I feel drained. It's harder to get going. Even when I'm alone and trying to feel something, it's like the spark is gone." That spark, the one that made him feel strong, confident, present. It's not just a mental state. It's a physical rhythm, a biological dance of nerves, hormones, blood flow, and emotion. And when self-pleasure becomes mindless, automatic, or compulsive, that rhythm starts to go out of tune. Here are the signs most men miss. You feel more tired than relaxed after self-pleasure. That's not just in your head. It's your nervous system being overstimulated, then crashing. You need more intensity, more pressure, more fantasy, just to feel the same level of sensation. That's a shift in your brain's dopamine sensitivity, a kind of tolerance, like any overused stimulus. You're doing it out of boredom or habit, not genuine desire. That's your mind reaching for a shortcut, not for intimacy. You're losing sensitivity. It takes longer to feel aroused, or climax doesn't bring the same satisfaction. That's often from physical overstimulation and the nerves simply becoming less responsive. And finally, you feel a kind of emptiness afterward. Not guilt, not shame, just a subtle, hollow feeling, as if the act didn't give you what you really needed. I've seen this pattern again and again, and it never starts with the intent to harm. It starts with comfort, with routine, with an innocent search for relief. But over time, if left unchecked, it becomes a quiet drain on energy, emotion, even identity. So ask yourself, is this habit giving back to your life or quietly taking something away? Is it helping you feel more connected to yourself and others? Or is it a private escape that's slowly becoming a cage? If any part of you whispered yes, then you're not failing, you're noticing. And that awareness is the key. Because once you understand the signals, you can begin to shift the story. And no, you don't have to give up your sexuality to do that. But you may need to reclaim it, reframe it, and retrain your body to respond with vitality again. And in the next section, I'll show you exactly how. We'll talk about how to restore the benefits of self-pleasure without the hidden risks. Now here's the part most men never hear. And it's the reason I still love doing this work after all these years. You don't need to give up your sexuality. You just need to give it back its meaning. You don't need to stop being a sensual man. You just need to stop letting your habits run on autopilot. And I say this because I've walked side by side with men who thought they were broken. But nearly every time, with just a few small shifts in how they approached their own bodies, things started to return. Energy, confidence, feeling, not from pills, not from miracle cures, but from slowing down and paying attention again. So here's what I want you to try. Just a new relationship with your own body. 1. Slow everything down. Most men rush, out of habit, out of stress, out of a sense that this is just something I do. But every time you speed through pleasure, you're teaching your nervous system to expect less. Slowing down isn't indulgent, it's healing. 2. Use natural touch. I tell my patients, use your hands like you treat a sore muscle. Gently, attentively. Coconut oil, almond oil, something pure, something kind. When you treat your skin with care, your body remembers how to feel again. 3. Change your posture. Stop slouching in a chair. Stop hiding under tension. Try lying flat. Try standing. Give your pelvic floor a break from compression. 4. Breathe deeply. Most men don't breathe enough during pleasure, but oxygen is blood flow. Oxygen is calm. When you breathe deeply, you slow the spike and open the door to deeper sensation. 5. Clean up what you watch. Let's be honest, porn is rewiring the brains of men everywhere. So turn it off, or at least turn it down. That's where your real power lives, not in the screen. None of this is about shame, it's about alignment. It's about coming back to yourself and reminding your brain, your nerves, your heart that pleasure is meant to nourish, not numb. And when you do this, not for one day, but with intention over time, you may be shocked by what comes back. The sensitivity, the clarity, the calm, even the confidence you thought was gone for good. But if you really want to reset this relationship, for good, the next 7 days are where it all begins. I've watched men in their 60s, 70s, even 80s light up again. Not from some new drug, not from giving up their desires, but by reclaiming a part of themselves they thought was lost forever. And it often begins with this. 7 simple days. Not a punishment, not a challenge, just a reset. A way to remind your body, your mind, and your spirit of who you truly are. Day 1 and 2. Complete stillness. No stimulation, no porn, no escape. Not because those things are evil, but because silence teaches you what your habits have been hiding. You might feel restless. You might feel urges. Good. That's your nervous system waking up. Write it down. Notice your thoughts, your triggers, your mood. This is awareness. This is the beginning of change. Day 3 and 4. Gentle, mindful touch. Not for release. Not for a quick escape. Just once, with presence. Use natural oils. Touch slowly. Breathe deeply. Let your body relearn softness, not intensity. Day 5 and 6. Replace the reflex. Every time the urge arises, ask yourself, what am I actually feeling? Is it boredom, loneliness, stress? Then do something different. Call a friend. Walk outside. Read something that nourishes your mind. Day 7. Reflect. Sit down. Ask yourself, how do I feel now compared to last week? More calm? More connected? More aware? Even if the answer is a little, that matters. You're stretching new muscles, emotional muscles, awareness muscles, even hope. You are not giving something up. You are taking something back. Your clarity, your energy, your control. But we're not done yet. Because there's one final truth every man over 60 needs to hear. Not from a chart, not from a textbook, but from one man to another. Remember, this video is for informational and educational purposes only. The content should not be interpreted as medical advice or a substitute for consultation with a licensed healthcare provider. always speak with your doctor before making changes to your lifestyle, health practices, or personal wellness routines. Let me leave you with this man to man. No white coat, no charts, no diagnosis, just truth. You are not broken. You are not past your prime, and you are certainly not alone. What you're feeling, this sense that something's off, that you've slipped away from yourself just a little, isn't weakness. It's your body asking you to listen. It's your heart reminding you that you're still here, and you still matter. See, I've met hundreds of men who came to me not because they were sick, but because they were quietly suffering. Suffering in silence behind closed doors, in bedrooms where connection felt distant, in bathrooms where relief became routine, and in lives that used to feel full, but now just feel muted. And when they finally spoke, when they dared to say out loud, "Doc, I don't feel like myself anymore," that's when everything began to shift, because honesty is healing. And now you've taken that step too. You've listened, you've reflected, and maybe, for the first time in years, you've asked yourself a deeper question. What do I truly need? That's where real masculinity lives. Not in perfection, not in performance, but in presence. Yes, we talked about masturbation. Yes, we talked about blood flow, hormones, sensitivity. But really, this conversation has always been about something bigger. Connection. To your body. To your emotions. To the people who matter. To the man you still are beneath the habits and the hesitation. You don't need to give up pleasure. You need to give yourself back permission to feel, to choose, to reconnect with what's real. And if you feel something waking up inside you right now, a little spark, a quiet strength, a sense of possibility, that's not by accident. That's you, still here, still capable, still worthy. If this message meant something to you, take one small action right now. Share it with a friend, with your partner, with another man who might need it. Because we heal faster when we don't heal alone. And if you haven't yet, tap subscribe, turn on the bell, and join us here at Corevia Health. This is more than a channel. This is a community for men who are done pretending and ready to feel alive again. You're not just aging, you're awakening. And I'm honored to walk this road with you. Dr. Elias Carr.